Aha. So now we're live. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So, hi, gang. Hi, everyone who's watching. If you don't know who I am, you're probably in the wrong place. But my name's Rich Litvin. And I wrote a book a few years ago called The Prosperous Coach. I do two things. I coach extraordinary leaders and I lead extraordinary coaches. And today we said we'd do part two of coaching some extraordinary leaders. And I also have my friend Adam Quiney on this call. What's up, Adam? Adam's an extraordinary coach in his own right. Been a member of 4PC, my community of very powerful coaches and leaders in his fourth year now, a founding member of 4PC. And Adam and I are going to play in about an hour's time, because what we're going to do is look at what happened during the next 60 minutes of coaching. Adam's going to deconstruct it and we'll play and we'll discuss. And so we'll see you in about an hour, Adam, because Adam's going to turn his camera off and go in the background. You want to say hi? Let's hear you first.
Hello.
That's it. No, you're done.
Yes, that's sufficient. All right. See you soon.
See you in a minute. So thanks, Adam. And now I get to play with three other friends of mine. You three, we got to have some coaching experiences in December, I think it was, of 2017, where we did exactly this, just the four of us, and I coached you and we dived in deep. And then we got such great feedback. People love to see live coaching, and I want to do more of this, put more of this out in the world. And I love to coach in a group too. Whilst coaching one-on-one is really fun, there's something about playing with a small group of people that I really enjoy. I've done it for years, run a program called a coaching salon for over a decade now. And now I have a mastermind where I coach in a small group. It's really fun because it's not just when you're being coached that you get coached. It's while someone else is being coached, you can't help but being coached. And by the way, that goes for you too. If you're watching and you're not one of us four, you can't help it. If you're watching a great coaching experience, coaching's happening to you at the very same time. So enjoy, sit back, relax, and let yourself be coached whilst I play with you three. I'm in Santa Monica, and it was freezing this morning, so I brought a heater into this room. I know I don't get any love from someone who's sitting in the snow right now, or even my family in London, but for LA it was freezing. But I just had to turn the heater off because now the sun has actually come out and it's got warm. So my context today is a line from an amazing choreographer, George Balanchine. He said, "I don't want people who want to dance. I want people who have to dance." He was a master choreographer. He founded the New York City Ballet and was acknowledged as the father of American ballet. And one of the things I love about him is he really appreciated it when an amazing artist, a performer on stage, would once in a while stumble. Because he said, stumbling during a performance is a sign of intensity, a sign that someone is really going for it. And that's why I like to work with high performers, because they're people who are willing to really go for it. And they're also not afraid to stumble. You can't be if you're a high performer. What we tend to assume is that success is this place you get to, and then it's easy street. You put your feet up, you relax, and life is just a breeze from then onwards. And it's not my experience. My experience is that the more successful you are, or your clients, the more successful you are, the higher the quality of the challenges you face. A buddy of mine, a friend of mine, one of my mentors, Michael Neal, and one of his friends was a climbing instructor. And what he used to do for the final test of your climbing experience when you're training to be climbers, he'd take you on this hike up these hills and you'd finally get to the summit. And as you get to the summit, you'd get to the top to realize it wasn't the summit. There were like 3 more peaks after that before you finally got there. And he'd watch and he'd look at your eyes. And in that moment, he would know if you were really meant to be a climber or you weren't. Because if your eyes said, "Oh, fuck," you weren't for him. And if your eyes went, "Oh my God, there's more," that excited him. And that's my experience of working with high performers. There's this sense of, "Oh my God, there's more," that you never want to stop. I'm throwing my whole business model in the air right now, when I could have cruised for years on the one that I had, because I'm looking for something that's more exciting and more edgy, and I crave change. And that's my context for today. We'll see if that relates to what you guys want to bring, but that's the context I'm bringing. I don't want people who want to dance. I want people who have to dance. Let's play. So no need for introductions or stories. We already got that. Let's see where we go in this moment. So hi, Luke.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey. Oh, you're a little bit quiet again. I don't know if your microphone came out of the socket one more time.
Is that better?
It's better.
Okay.
Yeah. How should we play?
Well, actually, since the webinar in December, I remember saying something to Ruby about, I don't remember exactly what I said. It was kind of more of an unconscious thought, but it was something about like the stuff that she already created could serve the people who that would be new to. And for me, it eventually led into, over the weeks to come, into creating a mind reading magical experience, but it's not so much about the tricks, it's about the stories, and the tricks are really kind of like the icing on the cake. So it really kind of changed my world in the sense of what are all the things you put around the routines, and then making it an experience, and then now actually going out and pitching it to resorts and things like that. So which was really out of my comfort zone. And instead of calling them, I actually drove to all of them in Orange County and went to meet them in person. So I was really kind of just stepping out of what I thought was comfortable. I mean, I got nothing to lose. So it was kind of, it was really just a lot of change. And I think it came from that conversation that we had.
Beautiful. I like it. I like using this phrase, we teach what we most need to learn, but those insights we have for other people, if we just are willing to hold up that mirror, so often it's the message that we need to hear.
Yeah.
So the context for people who are watching who maybe don't know you yet is that you're a mentalist, a hypnotist, a magician. You put all three together and you create amazing shows. And so what I'm hearing and what you're doing is that what you've seen is that whilst the trick can be really cool and impress people, actually it's all in the setup. It's all in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about creating the context and how that will fit so that the magical moment will make sense.
Nice.
So
nice. For anyone who doesn't know, you're actually going to be on stage at our next intensive in April, bringing some of this magic and the story too in one go. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Tell me in this moment, how can I serve you? What would make this an extraordinary experience for you?
I feel like my thinking is expanding rapidly in the past few weeks. And for some reason in the back of my mind, I feel like it's going to hit a plateau, or it's like just a phase. Like all this momentum is not going to last. I don't know why. I mean, that in itself is an illusion, I know, but it's about the longevity of being in this space.
Here's what I've got for you as you say that. It won't last because of friction. It's Newton's second law. An object in motion will stay in motion. An object that's still will stay still unless an external force acts upon it. And there's always external forces acting upon stuff. Mm-hmm. You might get tired. You might discover that there's too many magicians in Orange County, the area you live. There's other forces acting. That's the force of friction, which will slow things down. So for me, knowing that helps me to relax. It's like, okay, well, I know momentum won't last unless I keep it going. So I'm always looking at ways, well, how do I keep the momentum up? Especially my own. Being an entrepreneur, like we forget, especially when our jobs are so much focused on others and serving, that we forget to actually take care of this person sitting in this seat. Here's the other piece I got for you. It's that you have to learn to love the plateau. This is from George Leonard's book on mastery, is that a master is someone who learns that the plateaus are okay. That if you're willing to stay in the plateau, that's where the magic happens. It's the line from Sam Altman, who's the founder of Y Combinator, who says the problem with being on an exponential curve is if you look behind you, it looks flat. And if you look in front of you, it looks vertical.
Okay.
And because I'm talking to 3 people right now who are extraordinary top performers, much of the time you'll be on this exponential curve. The trouble is you don't know where you are on it. And you could be right in front of that moment where things are about to take off. So your willingness to stay on the plateau long enough is where the rise will come.
Interesting. Okay.
So because I know how you like to play, and it's in that reflection, I'm going to leave you in that place where there's a new thought I just put in and see what comes as we play and come back to you.
Okay, cool.
All right. Hey, Ruby.
Hi, Rich.
Hey. What have you got? How shall we play today? It might come from the distinctions I've already shared, or something that just happened, or maybe there's something you don't know. I'm coming in for this thing today.
Well, we meet at a very crazy time in my life when I'm prepping for my 3-day event next week. And so I'm sitting with this feeling of having so much to do, and yet also having so much to take care of in terms of myself. And also on top of that, my own internal desire to deliver as amazing an event as I did last year. And I feel like all of this is just not serving me. Like it's all, I can see it all. I see it in front of me. I'm experiencing it on a day-to-day basis, and it's all not serving me. And it just feels like my head's bobbing in water, you know?
Yeah, you make me think of a duck in this moment. The story of a duck is that you see on the surface they're just swimming smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
Underneath, their legs are furious. Because
Mm-hmm.
I look at you, I wouldn't have made up any of that story you just shared with me. But underneath
Right.
it, there's this frenetic energy.
Right. Yeah. And I work best under pressure. So so that's also this
Help
weird
me with that, because I have a distinction between pressure and stress. I get pressure. I'm not afraid of hard work. When there's a deadline coming up, you have an event in a few days' time, there might be pressure. You've got things you're going to accomplish in that time. But it sounds like there's stress in there. When you say it's a crazy time in my life. What has you choose to add stress in as well as pressure?
Well, I see the difference. I work well under pressure. I don't work well under stress.
And listen carefully to my question. What has you choose to add stress in as well as pressure?
What has me choosing to add stress in? I feel like the stress is directly related to the beliefs. Not the beliefs, sorry, my expectations of myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the stress is. It's all there.
Who would you be without this stress, Ruby?
Well, I would be a lot more calm and productive, most likely.
Mm-hmm. Keep going. Use it like a sentence stem. Say it 10 times. Without the stress, I would be. Without the stress, I would be. I'll count. Okay. Don't think. Don't filter. Some might be positive, some might not. Whatever comes. Without the stress, I would be.
Without the stress, I would be more calm. Without the stress, I would act with more intention. Without the stress, I would feel better. Without the stress, my physical body would feel better. Without the stress, I would perform better. Without the stress, I would feel more free. Without the stress, I would have more fun. Without the stress, I would experience more ease. I don't know how many that was.
So let's do this. New sentence stem for you. The benefit of feeling stressed is?
The benefit of feeling stress is not like, I don't see a benefit to it at all. That's my honest to God answer. I don't.
Well, there must be a benefit. Otherwise your system wouldn't be creating the stress. How about this? I'll give you some benefits of adding stress in. Without stress, I'd feel guilty. If I showed up at the event, it would feel like it was too easy, that I hadn't worked hard, that I have a belief that you're supposed to work hard to accomplish something. So I add stress in because then I feel like I've really accomplished something. There's a few. Spoken from experience, but I didn't make them up.
None of those quite resonate, but there is the belief of working hard. You know, it all takes hard work. That's really all that's coming up.
Take me back in time. When is the first moment in your life as a youngster when you remember that thought, it all takes hard work?
Oh, this is all from my dad. He's a very driven, very successful entrepreneur, even over the age of 60, and still going after his biggest dreams. And he inspires me to no end.
Yeah. And he's one of those driven entrepreneurs who works incredibly hard.
To the point where it's unhealthy. Yes.
What would it mean about you or your relationship if you found a way to accomplish a lot and it wasn't hard work? It was effortless.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate goal, is to create, and that's where I find myself in creation phase. We talked about this on the last webinar. I'm in creation phase, and I'm creating all these things that are to set me up for the ease in the future. So right now I'm spreading myself thin, getting all these things done and created so that I can rest more later, because that is what I deeply desire, is not working the same way that my dad worked, but also honoring that ambition and drive in me while honoring my desire to have more ease and time in my family life and my personal life.
So let's distinguish those two. Let's separate them out. And by the way, anyone else, any of you have a driven father? And for me, it was an absent father. I mean, he was working really hard, putting 3 kids through private school, taking care of us. My dad was not around. Luke, you can relate as well. So, my dad was always driven. Before he passed away, we talked about how guilty he felt actually about the things that he missed from me growing up. So I can relate on both sides of this. And as a man who can easily slip into that place of being driven and working hard, if I don't catch it. It all takes hard work and having ambition and drive. Oh, there's a chat, by the way, guys. I see somebody's posted. You guys can chat and talk and ask questions of each other and talk as much as you like in the chat. I'm going to do my best to ignore it so I can be as present as I can with you guys. So it all takes hard work, and there's ambition and drive on this side. And those two we can distinguish. I'm not saying take away your ambition and drive. It's what makes you feel alive, right? That's who you are. You could not have that be part of you. What if you could make it effortless? And I don't mean easy, because you're willing to do hard work when it's needed. But what if you could have it be effortless? You see, you have it that it's out in the future. One day, finally, when I've got it all set up, the ease will come. But it's from this place that it comes, from this present moment that it comes. So let me ask you this. If something happened, some family stuff, some life stuff, some stuff that went on that meant you couldn't do one more thing between now and the event happening. So all you could do is walk in the door on that first day and show up. Do you have any doubts that you would create an amazing experience for people?
No, that's a very hard no.
No, you don't have any doubts?
I don't have any doubts. Yeah. I just need to show up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I caught myself a few years ago going through exactly this. I had this realization. I feel constantly guilty that I'm not doing enough in order to show up and create an amazing experience, where if I could have this kind of conversation, I could get that oh, I could deliver an amazing experience just by showing up. And I've learned to let go of that feeling and thought. It still comes in, it still plays a little bit, but I'm learning to let go of it more and more and more, that I do my best work when I just show up. Mm. So I know you've worked a little bit in TV or film or music. Is that right? I forget that you're in, but you're an artist. You're a performer. You're what they call in Hollywood talent. Mm. And here's what talent does. The doorbell rings and there's a car outside. And you get in the car and they drive you to the set and you perform, and then you get back in and you drive home again. Mm-hmm. And there's something around that for you to look at, how can I let go of all the stuff that I think I need to do? Some of that stuff you can keep doing if you choose to, but only when you choose to, because you know you could create something absolutely amazing for your audience just by showing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I delegate. I last year was learning how to delegate, and I delegate now with my assistant, which has been amazing. I've been delegating with my event team because I have a team this year, which has been amazing. I think it's just because at this current moment in time, I'm working with a clean slate. I've gotten rid of all my programs. I've gotten rid of everything. And I'm in this space of, okay, what do I bring out next? And so I have this urge, like the sense of urgency to like, okay, create something, do something.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yes.
Maybe you'll discover it by just showing up. Mm-hmm. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I bet money that if you showed up and told your audience that, and I think they already know, I'm in a space of reinvention, rediscovery. So we're going to create an amazing experience for you this weekend, but I cannot tell you what it's going to be in advance. This isn't like a year ago where I knew this was the result you're going to get, and I'm going to do my darndest to make sure you get it. Mm-hmm. I got no clue what you're going to get by the end of our time together, but I promise you it will change your life. And I know it's going to change mine. You want to play? Mm.
Yeah, I could do that. Mm-hmm. I think this is just because I've never done it in that way. You know, last year I went in with a real pitch. This year I'm doing a pitch-free event, and I'm inviting. The question has just been, what am I inviting them to? But leaving it open feels a lot lighter.
Well, look, here's the truth of it. You don't even know what you're inviting them to.
Right, exactly.
So you're pushing yourself to get something that you can invite them to that you don't. What if the thing you're going to invite, how about this? What if you know, and what if you even tell them before they begin? Before we end this weekend, I'm going to invite you to something. But I don't even know what it is right now. I'm pretty sure I'll know by the end of this weekend. And then I'll invite you. Or maybe you'll come up to me and say, Ruby, I don't know what you're creating, but I want to be with you. When I launched 4PC, you probably heard this story. I planned it out in my mind what this is going to be. This is an amazing community of high-level coaches. And I went into this intensive. And so my kids always come to my events if we're in LA. And Kaleo, who must have been 2 at the time, came and sat on my lap. And I started to explain 4PC to everybody for the first time. And I started to get nervous. And I started to sweat. And I started to stumble over my words. And I caught myself and I said, guys, let's take a break. I'm getting a bit confused because Kaleo's here and I need to get him back to Monique. And we took a break for 5 minutes. We came back and I caught myself during the break. And I said, you know what, guys? I got to call myself out. I wasn't getting nervous and tongue-tied because my son was on my lap. I created this amazing thing called 4PC in my mind. And this is the first time I've spoken it out loud. And it wouldn't matter if my son was on my lap or not. I was getting tongue-tied because I didn't know how to explain it to you. It sounded great in my head. And as soon as I got real like that, Alison Crowe at the back of the room went, I'm in. And Mark Silverman went, I'm in. And I said, I haven't explained it to you guys yet. I don't care. I'm in. I want to be with you. And they were founder members of 4PC. Mm-hmm. So your people are already enrolled in you. And I think you'll discover they'll even be even more enrolled with you and in you. Show them that you're letting go of that old story, that it all takes hard work. Doesn't take away the ambition and drive, doesn't invalidate your relationship with your father who's doing amazing things and still is, but allows you to take away the thing that doesn't serve you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to sit with that.
That's why I'm sitting with the silence, because I think there's something there. Cool. Thanks, Ruby.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Rich.
Hey, so you might have got something from anything that's come up already, or there may be something else that's really close to you want to bring in today. How should we play?
Yeah, no, there's good stuff in both with Luke and with Ruby. I think for me today, where I want to play is that over the last 2 weeks, a certain heaviness has come back in or come in. And I think I've identified the source of the heaviness. And it's an oldie but a goodie for me. And that is scarcity, this working from scarcity. And this is something, I say it's an oldie but a goodie, but I first became really aware of this when we were in London. And I'd mentioned this to you earlier, when I was talking about something I wanted to take on and it felt heavy and I felt like, oh man, if I try to do that, it's just going to take over my life and it's just going to be hard and it's going to, push the rest of my life in places I don't want it to go. And then I took that awareness and I started to say, okay, no, how do I make things lighter? How do I look at things from a place of abundance versus scarcity? And for the most part, I've been doing that. So this heaviness has come in because, and I just realized it, I think, over the last couple of days that this is what's going on because I've seen symptoms, but I hadn't been able to identify the source. So if you could see my space right now, it's like a mess, total mess right now. And a lot of other things are I'm very scattered and not necessarily focused. And I realized, so I'm launching this new company with this new product. It's a physical product, therefore it has a lot of investment in it. There's a lot of cascading dependencies, all of which require me to put significant amounts of money out before I can even get to the position of starting to take money in. And I think what's been going on is that subconsciously I've been freaking out because that plays right into the whole scarcity thing. There is money flowing out and I don't know when it's going to flow back. Well, I know when it's going to start flowing back in, but I think I'm so conditioned to that. So where I would love to play today is, so a lot of times we have these breakthroughs of awareness, of understanding, of distinctions, as I like to call them. And it's like, oh my gosh, yes, now I've got this energy and it's running through my life. And then a few months down the road, a little time passes and these old habits and these old reactions start creeping in. And so I guess where I want to play is how do we keep those distinctions? How do we fight those reflexes from coming back in?
So first of all, what you're talking about is very real for very many people. It does relate to something you guys, Ruby and Luke, have talked about, or what I'm present to as well. They're very human experiences. They go back, I was going to say generations, they go back through almost every generation in human history. If you think about it, maybe not our parents or grandparents for some of us, maybe not our generation for some of us, but even now for much of the planet, we can live in scarcity. And so you're attuned to look for when a resource is going to run out. The reason so many people are obese is that our body is designed as animals that when we found a piece of meat, we'd eat it. Well, now there's cakes and candy and stuff and sugar, and so we eat it. We don't know. We haven't got self-control because we didn't need it through most of time. So what you're calling heaviness and scarcity, I just want to make real right now and make okay. it's a very human response. It means you're human. So good job. And
I pull it off most days.
you're also at the spearhead of human evolution. That you actually can catch this means you're at the very forefront of human evolution. So again, amazing job that you see this. Most people don't catch it. Most people live in a world of scarcity, live in a world of heaviness, and never get to see it. That you see it puts you a level beyond most people. How do we see it on a regular basis? I think having some kind of support, whether it's a coach who you're talking to on a regular basis, so you can say, look, these are my old patterns. Let's look at them. Again, you keep an eye on them. Or a group that you're in, a mastermind where you support one another. Or for years before I started coaching, I did a weekly review. I would sit down on a Sunday. I'd go somewhere beautiful, usually by the water. It just really worked for me. And I would reflect. And I started doing this, I think it was 1997, when I read Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the 7th habit, sharpen the saw. If you're cutting a piece of wood and you keep cutting and cutting and cutting, your saw gets blunt eventually. It's time to sharpen the saw. And that's us. And it's the self-care piece. And so those are the 3 ways I've found to keep awareness of something like that. Even a weekly review on your own, where if you sat down once a week and said, where in the week that's just gone, or what experiences in the week that just went by, was there heaviness or lightness? What experiences was there scarcity and abundance? And then in the week that's coming, where would I like to bring in lightness and abundance? If you did that simple reflection every single week for the next 90 days, your world will begin to transform. You'd start seeing things that you don't usually see. You'd see abundance. Can I talk about your product? Is that, I could forget, I'm not sure how
Sure.
secret it is. So
No, it's not secret at all.
So Steve's designing an amazing product. I'll summarize it and you tell me I got it right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a physical product. What do you call, what's that old, that style in the movies, Steve, where it's, what's the word you tell? It's a modern movie but with more kind of 19th century Victorian machinery. What's that?
Right. It's sort of a nostalgic, a little bit of steampunk and Gilded Age.
Steampunk.
Mm-hmm.
So he's designed this product where you get to see in real time where the markets are, whether it's a bull market or a bear market, if the markets are up or they're down. And basically there's this swing where it swings on this physical product towards the bear or towards the bull, and it tells you in real time where the markets are, because it's Wi-Fi connected. It's connected in real time to the markets, but you've got this physical brass or bronze product where you see it is in a visceral way something that's happening. You could check an app on your phone, but I love this idea of this beautiful object sitting on your shelf. Did that capture it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a tabletop sculpture of a seesaw that tilts depending on where the actual market is going in real time. So it's physically representing what's actually happening in the world without interrupting, without you having to shout at it to ask it something. It's just part of your environment, and it exists in your space and communicates.
It's beautiful. I've seen the images of it. It's going to be fantastic. And you need one for your mind. So it's that swings from heaviness to lightness, that swings from scarcity to abundance, and it's like measuring in real time. Oh, this is the state of Steve's mind today. So you could catch it. So it is a metaphor actually for what's going on. You can't do anything about it. It's not, you can't stop the markets. You can see where they are. You can't stop your thinking. You're human. There are times when it's important to be in scarcity mode. You want to protect your family. You don't want the money to run out. You don't want to spend too much on the resources up front for this project. You want to mitigate the risk. And there are times when you'll be a risk taker, when you want to just say, I'm going to go to abundance. I know it's coming back and I'm investing. And your ability to see that in the moment is what counts, not your ability to do anything about it. Just seeing your state of mind will shift everything.
Yeah, I agree with that. That I think I've turned the corner over the last 2 days because I finally was able to see it. Like for the last week or so, it's just been this heaviness that's been kind of just there, and I'm like, and the physical environment starting to get scattered, and the attention span starting to get very distracted. And as soon as I recognized it, I think for what it was, then it's a sense of like, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with. Hello, old friend, so to speak. And yeah, there's something about it. So, and the way you pointed out is helpful. And I have been doing, it's funny, I do a once a week check-in, but I never look back, right? I always the only reason I would look back is because I'm looking at, okay, what's going to make this next week really phenomenally successful? That's what how do I try to frame my week?
Of course you do, because you're a high performer and you're a visionary, like all of us. And when you work with clients who are visionaries and who are future focused, we never turn around and look behind us. One of the things we do in 4PC, we have a tool we call the turnaround tool. And every time we meet in 4PC, the first thing we do is we turn around and we say, what have you accomplished in the last 2 or 3 months since we last met? What are you proud of? And you look at the past, and then you say, what are you up to currently that you feel great about? And then you look into the future again, like, what are you excited about that's coming?
Right.
So here's what I heard. What you now have is a compass. You're just like the product swinging from left to right. When your room starts to look messy, it's a clue that your state of mind is a little bit off.
Yep.
So I wear this little bracelet that is a physical reminder to work out. And it's black, and I turn it around when I've done my workout, and it's green. And I've trained my little boys. If you see Daddy's bracelet is black at the end of the day, he hasn't done his workout. Remind me, so I do my workout. I did it this morning, so it's green. You could train the family to say, look, hey, Daddy, we notice your office is messy. How's your state of mind?
Absolutely. I think the key in there is when I look back over the previous week, I just look at it for the stuff that didn't get done, so that I can move it into the next week or decide if it should have gotten done. I never really step back and look at it and go, okay, that was heavy, that was light, that was great, something was off with that, let's think about that. It's not really a review, it's just more of a tidying the list type of thing. So I think that's a really important thing. It's not something that I do automatically. And my wife has pointed this out about me a lot, is like the thing about achieving the goal is you just move on. There's no celebration, there's no recognition. It's just like, okay, that was good, but what I really got to do is this next thing.
So who else knows that one? For me, it's 25 seconds. I mean, I'm ahead of you. I give myself 25 seconds to celebrate before I start looking at how I should have done it bigger or better or differently, or what's next. You guys know that one too, Luke, Ruby? Yeah. It's how high performers work. It's how visionaries work. We're future focused. We don't give ourselves time to acknowledge ourselves. We have this thought of, so we have ambition, we have drive, and like Ruby said, it takes hard work. And so we're off again to the next piece of hard work. And the way I describe it, what I want for my clients is, in the book, The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks talks about zone of genius. And when you're working in your zone of genius, when you're doing those few things that only you can do and nobody else can do, life is effortless. There's a sense of ease and calm and stillness. And what I want for my clients is they move closer and closer. They should feel more and more lazy the more they go in that direction. And that's the sign they're working in their zone of genius. And we can learn, if we have some consciousness around it, to let go of these old stories about how I should feel guilty, or I shouldn't acknowledge myself, or it must be hard work. And we can shift the stories that, and they're not just our stories, by the way. My wife did a course at the University of Santa Monica in spiritual psychology, and had to do a family tree that tracked back beliefs. And you could see, oh my God, this scarcity around money goes back 3 generations. Or having men who are this kind of relationship went back these 2 generations. And you can finally let go of these old stories that go back generations. And here's the one. Steve, tell me about your kids for a moment.
Just one. It's Eliana, 16.
16.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah, time flies, right?
Yeah, it does.
So here's the one for anyone who ever works with parents. This is the do not push button, but if you do it very sensitively. As a father, what you get to model to your daughter when you start to look at, how do I take care of myself? How do I turn around and say, what am I proud of? You start to give her a way of doing that for herself. Otherwise, Ruby, tell me this is true, 20 years down the line, she'll be on a call like this where I've got to work hard. Because we love our dads and we want to model our dads. And so I'm pushing this little button as a parent where you get to break an old pattern, not just for you that goes back generations, but to really serve your daughter, to be a role model for her, how to create an amazing life.
Yeah. And that's probably the most important thing in the whole mix.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Let me check in with each of you. What have you got so far? The single biggest insight you've got in this moment. Hey, Luke.
Hey, kind of like the product that Steve's making, I think I was expecting the momentum to be on one side all the time, where it's more of a back and forth and kind of navigating the waters as opposed to thinking they're always going to be one way, whether it's momentum or stress. But I think the biggest thing that you said earlier was that sometimes we think it has to be harder than it is. Yeah, I think that was kind of the big, so I need to look back and see where I was thinking it had to be harder.
Nice.
And even why.
Nice. Yeah, the insight that just flashed into me as you talked about momentum. If I showed you a way to have momentum, take friction out of the life, this path that could be ease for the rest of your life, you'd be bored.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. I knew this when the Prosperous Coach book was published. I knew I could create one seminar that I could deliver again and again for the rest of my life and make millions from that. It would bore the shit out of me. I've never done the same event twice. I'm throwing my whole business model up in the air right now because I was just bored. What can I do this? So you don't actually want what you think you wanted at the beginning of this call.
No, not at all.
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks.
How about you, Ruby? What have you got from any of these pieces today? What's the biggest insight?
Just being. So, I was thinking about that and I was like, wait, I'm actually practicing this right now in a group coaching program that I'm the coach for. And it's the first time that I'm practicing just being versus over delivering. Because that's my go-to is over delivery, perfectionism. And so now that I actually have a real life example that I didn't even relate back to until this moment, it feels so much more tangible and I'm having so much more fun with that group. And they're growing at an exponential rate, which is my mind is blown. So just showing up in that way in everything that I do and letting go of the control and letting go of the perfectionism and letting go of the need to feel overly prepared because I am prepared. I mean, I can do my event tomorrow. I could do my event today.
Yeah. I'll give you a trick that will really serve you. Call yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
Start of an event, say, hey, my MO is to be a perfectionist and to over deliver. to have worked my butt off in order to give you the most amazing experience I could and own it. And so I haven't done that this time. You can say I'm pretty certain I'm going to create an amazing experience for you, but this time I don't know what the experience will be. That's the only distinction. Mm-hmm. This time I don't know the end result. But you, in this place of being, that's you in your power. And it's so rare, it will really have a powerful impact on you.
Well, you want to hear something ironic? I built that piece, that exact piece, what you just said, into my event script, overly prepared. But just the piece of like, just show up and share what you've learned from last year's event to this year's, and like the mind fuckery that you've been going through. And so that was built in. So just hearing you say that felt good too. Yeah.
It's been my running joke for years that because I run bigger and bigger events now, my team put together spreadsheets. They need to know about logistics, hotels, things like this. So there's this big spreadsheet in our business for how the event's going to go. And there's this one column which says what Rich is going to do. My joke has always been like, you'll have to fill that one in after the event is over, because I don't know. And sometimes we plan some things, like we know Luke is going to be on at some point. We'll put some things in, but it might be that in the moment something comes up that I say, hey, Luke, can you come on now? Or, hey, let's do someone else in this moment. Or I'm going to coach you and we're going to dive deep. I remember once it was Alison Crowe actually asked a question at about 4 p.m. at the end of the day. And I said, hey, come up on stage with me. Can I coach you? And she said, sure. I ended up coaching Alison for about an hour on stage in the moment. And she was in tears and the audience were in tears, because it was what was needed in that moment. Mm. Couldn't have planned for that. Mm-hmm. And it was life-changing for her and magical for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I think the thing that struck me is there's this sense of like, so this feeling of scarcity, or this feeling of perfection, or this feeling of having to work hard. Like there's a sense of like, we have to push that away, or we have to not feel that. And I think the big thing for me today was like, no, you're going to feel that. We're wired. I almost think of it as like, it's a visit from my depression era grandmother, who I loved. In a sense, it's like that spirit in the world is there. And it's how we choose to exist with it and be with it, and what we do with it, that is what matters.
Yeah, I love that. Your depression era grandma is coming to say, hey, watch out, don't spend too much money, because in her time that would have been. I remember having a conversation with my father about risk, because he was really worried. I lost my job in, I forget the year, 2005, began reinventing myself as a coach, and he'd seen me on this path to be a head teacher and wanted that for me. And he saw this as really risky, me going in a different direction. And I somehow had the thought, and I said, hey, Dad, so he was an optometrist and built his own practice as an entrepreneur, and always worked for himself. And then, I don't know what year it was, but when personal computers came out for the first time, he loved them. And he turned half of his optometrist practice over to a store that sold computers, and they became a consultant. And I said, what did Grandma think when you were doing these things? Did she think you were taking risks? And he said, oh my God, she thought this was crazy what I was doing. She didn't. I said, but for you, it wasn't a risk, right? He said, no, I just wanted to. It's like, do you get that what looks risky for me is what looked risky to Grandma for what you were doing? And he got it in that moment. It was just a really lovely moment with my dad.
Great. Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Luke, where else should we go before the call's over? What would really serve you today?
Well, one thing that I just noticed and wrote down was, to me, I think the magic is catching the moment. And as coaches, as high performers, we're all doing that all the time, but we do it in our own way. And that's kind of, to me, what when we're in our genius zone, that's what we're doing, is we're capturing the moment so it feels effortless. And we're just kind of getting out of our own way.
Yeah, it's like the story I told you last time. So Luke's a magician. I went to train at the Magic Castle to do a beginner's magic course. And I thought it'd be so exciting. We learned these amazing tricks. And I was just taught how to shuffle cards for 6 weeks when they did teach us some tricks as well. But until you can shuffle in a really powerful way, you can't be a great with cards. And it bored the hell out of me and I couldn't do it. And I just gave up. It's like your willingness to do the things that are challenging is what's going to make the difference down the road, and then it will feel effortless. And most people aren't willing. That's what most people are not high performers, because the plateau, the willingness to stay on that plateau long enough is too much for most people, and that's okay. But if you want to be an elite in your field, you've got to be willing to stay there long enough, and you get it because you must have been to be able to do the kind of illusions that you do. It takes years of training to make them look effortless.
Yeah. And recently I've been watching a lot of lectures of some people that I really admire. And one guy, I'm not going to give away names, but one guy did a great lecture and he just floored everyone with like a $4 item you could get at a magic kiosk, but no one thought it would be that simple. And he's like, I just used it and told you I didn't and put it in your face because I was bold with it. And then no one questioned it. And it was so simple. I thought like that was just the greatest magical moment I've had in a long time. And it was just capturing that moment is all it was.
So that makes me think for you, Ruby, that the boldness and that nobody questions it. You show up at your event with a boldness. This is how we're playing. This is what we're going to do. No one will question it. They're there for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that feels a lot better.
And just like with coaching, for me, coaching or even an event, for me, it's a 200% relationship. So I'm going to bring all the magic I can, just like I have today, but you've got to meet me. You've got to play as well. We've all had clients who aren't willing to play, and that's not a 200% relationship. You can't create magic from there. But it's not 50-50. It's not, if I do my bit and create an amazing event, then you'll do your bit and get amazing results. And I'll sometimes play with them. You can show up on day one and say, hey, here's a fun question to ask. What would you do if I told you guys that something's happening in my life and I can't stay, that I have to leave right now? What would you do to get 10 times your money's worth from this event if I wasn't even here?
It's a great way to kick things off.
Yeah. Okay, mental note. I might use that myself. It just came to me in the moment. It's powerful, right? Pulls out of them. Like, are you invested? Are you really here to play?
Mm-hmm.
We had a question in the Prosperous Coach Facebook group last year. Someone was saying, how will I know I get value? Will I get value from this event? Who can tell me if I get value from coming to an intensive? And I said, that's the wrong question. Because you get 10 people telling you, I had an amazing experience at the last intensive, but that's their experience. You have to come here saying, what am I willing to do to get 10 times my money's worth, even if it's the least exciting or interesting event I've ever been to? Because it comes from in here, and you can draw that out of them.
Definitely.
Actually, this reminds me, because I promised I'd speak about this. We've got two tickets left to the April intensive. We're sold out faster and more ahead than we've ever been. So we're about to open up the doors. So if you're interested, get on richlitvin.com/intensive if you're watching. There's 2 tickets left as of this morning. We're also opening the doors for the October intensive. And we've got an early bird offer, because I love people who take action. So if you want to take action, we've got 36 spots have already gone for October, which is cool. So we've got 20 tickets left at the early bird price, which is $13.97. And after that, the price goes up $200. And if you buy your ticket by Monday, February the 26th, we're running a bonus masterclass. Giovanna's going to run it, and you get access to that as well. So love to see you in April. Move fast if you want to join us there, because we're almost sold out. And if you want to come in October, then go to richlitvin.com/intensive, because we've got 20 tickets left at that early bird price and a special incentive. So thanks for that reminder, Ruby. Talking of events, we've got ours coming up. How about you, Steve? Anything else that would really serve in this moment?
Nothing's coming to mind. I mean, to be fair, I mean, after our last session, there was a huge amount of progress last time. For those who weren't on the previous webinar, it was all about people pleasing in one of my other areas. I think my two hot button areas are scarcity and people pleasing. So that's my.
I saw the article you wrote where you've really embraced that and owned that. So I don't ask from this place, Steve, of getting to some magical description of what has changed in you. For me, because I coach around distinctions and I coach around insight, a single insight can change everything. Your awareness of the lightness and heaviness, your willingness to look at that week after week for the next 12 weeks could transform your life. We don't need to have a life-changing moment that happens on the call like this. I was checking in to see if anything else was there. My sense is that this is what I call a hot seat moment for each of you, that it's time to take you off the hot seat. I was curious if there's anywhere else to go in this moment, but my sense is we're actually there. And that's why I say my coaching isn't time-based. Sometimes you can get to one of these moments in 5 minutes with a client. A single distinction, the more distinctions you have around life and business, the more power you have. And a single distinction, a single insight can really transform everything. And you can get there fast sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think we're in a good place. At least I'm in a good place. Or the place I'm meant to be.
Where are you on the
I am swinging towards equilibrium. I'm maybe not full bull yet, but we're definitely.
Well, but I think that's the catch, because this isn't like the bull and the bear market where, or even in a bull and bear market, sometimes in a bear market when everyone is selling, it's a good time to buy, right? So it's not like one is better or worse than the other. That's the key to you catching, am I in lightness or in heaviness? Am I in scarcity or abundance? What sounds like a bad thing, scarcity, is just, as your grandmother would know, no, I want to make sure we take care. We've got enough resources to take care of the family. Not good, not bad. Sometimes abundance is great, and sometimes abundance is about taking a risk that you might not need to take. So your awareness of where you are is key, not that either is good or bad.
Right. Fair enough.
Cool. Thank you, guys. I'm going to ask Adam to bring his camera on now, and we'll see what we got. Hey, what's going on, Adam?
Just hanging out, listening to some coaching.
Nice. Nice.
Well, the first thing, Rich, I want to do is really acknowledge, I was sitting back, getting in my head about like, what am I going to say? Am I going to say the right thing? I better say the good thing. And then I was like, wow, I have the easy job. I just have to dissect what's happened. Rich has to actually do this. So I really want to acknowledge you for the leadership and actually I want to acknowledge everyone on this call, because that's not an easy place to come from. It was really beautiful just to get to witness that. So thanks for letting me see that.
I have to do what I was talking to Ruby about, Adam. I've learned that I go into this, I want to over prepare. I want to be perfect. Can we get an insight when someone goes, wow, and their mind is blown, that I have to let go of all that so I can just be as present as I can, because that's the key to powerful coaching. And my job is not, as much as it's cool on camera, my job isn't to make sure that you get an insight. It's to create the space for it. And it might not come during the conversation. It might come in the days, weeks, or even months afterwards.
Did you feel that we could call it like that need, the sort of like, oh my God, I'm on performing, I'm on stage, so to speak. Like, did you feel that show up at any point while you were coaching with Ruby, Luke, or Steve?
I think only at the end when Steve, I saw Steve, it was almost like, I felt, Steve, you were trying to protect me, because it was like, well, I had some great insights on the last call. And that's why I was trying to take that away. Like, we don't need that. Just that one insight might have been enough for you to have a massive impact. And so that was the only moment where it came. Because I've learned to play with that over the years.
And yeah, so how do you play with that? Like, because I can imagine there's a lot of people just even witnessing where they're like, well, yeah, but he's Rich Litvin. Like when people say, well, yeah, he's Sean Stevenson. Like, is it just sort of ingrained now that you kind of distinguish it and then set it aside? Or do you have ways that you be with that and play with it?
So I was at an event a few years ago, run by somebody else, and someone on stage said they were being coached or something was happening, and they said, "I want to be like Rich Litvin," and I stood up and went, "I want to be like Rich Litvin," because people make up a story about who you like. You know, this idea of we compare how they look on the outside with how we feel on the inside. So now I've done this long enough now that I'm more relaxed than I used to be. I'm more relaxed on camera and things like that, but I still have all sorts of stuff that goes on inside of me. And what I do when stuff like that happens, even when I catch it, I will call myself out as quickly as possible. Hey, I just noticed when I was coaching you, I was trying to move you in this direction because I thought you'd get an insight here, or I was feeling insecure or nervous. That's why I said this thing. The moment I call myself out, I actually relax, takes the pressure off. And the moment I do that, we come closer anyway. So there's power in calling myself out even when I catch it.
I noticed one of the, sort of the 5 distinctions for you in coaching is like leadership and being willing to lead and to let your client lead. And even at the start of the call, I heard you, I can't remember. Oh yeah, you shared about your heater of all things, right? But it was like, I really got like that was a distraction in your space. And rather than pretend it's not there and operate over top of that, you just brought it into the space like, oh, this is here. Like just a really mundane example of you doing exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you might remember we had an event a few years ago here in LA, and we had a power cut. And we did some stuff out in the lobby for a while in small groups, but we realized if we keep the doors open in the back of the room, I was on stage, the light was on me, I was lit up. So I said, let's get everyone back in. It's been on too long. We got everyone back in the room, and I'm sitting on the stage and I'm coaching. And about 5 minutes in, it dawns on me, there's no freaking air conditioning. The lighting's okay, but I'm coaching. And the moment I start to sweat, then I get self-conscious that now I'm sweating. So now it makes me sweat more, and I get in this loop. And then I'm trying to coach. I think I was teaching in that moment. And now I'm self-conscious, and I had to call out to somebody to bring me has anyone got a towel they can bring me? But just that owning what was going on and making a joke at my own expense was really good for me. I have this tendency to take myself really seriously. And the moment I can own I'm taking myself too seriously, I relax and have a bit of a laugh and things shift.
I totally can't relate to that.
I was going to say, I know you can.
Tell me about this. So one of the things I noticed you do like really well is, and I actually think this is part of being a masterful coach and speaks a bit to leadership, which is sharing stories, but doing so in such a way that the story provides like the person listening something for themselves, as opposed to like, oh, this is a nice story about Rich. People hear that and they're like, oh, wow, I can, there's less of a bridge they have to walk over to get what's in it for themselves. Is that something you're consciously doing? Have you practiced that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Conscious. So I want to draw a distinction between the personal and the universal. Sometimes when you're coaching someone, you want to go to the universal. Hey, Steve, that thing you were going through, that's a very human thing. Thousands of years of human evolution, I'm going to the universal because it feels really good to know, I get it. It's not just me. And sometimes it's the personal rather than universal. Hey, Ruby, I had a dad who was like this, and I can relate to you because I show up this way, and then I'll tell a story there. So the catch is in the personal. If it's like this burning desire to tell a story, or if you get more than about 60 seconds into it and I can't remember why I started telling you this. It's the personal that's being called out because you just thought it was a cool story to tell. If you catch, that's why you see me writing notes on my piece of paper. I've got sorts of notes I'm writing on here that I can stay present to what was said as I'm telling the story. I'm coming back to the distinction that I got or the idea that I was present to. So there's the personal and the universal, and I'm conscious of when I'm using them.
Did that shift for you? Like as you were practicing this, developing yourself as a coach, was it originally like much more sort of stories about you? And then over time you were able to tell a personal story in such a way that...
No, well, I remember I was coached by Michael Neal. I apprenticed with Michael Neal almost 10 years ago. Michael's an amazing storyteller. And I remember being coached by him. When am I ever going to have any stories to tell? It's amazing how he tells so many stories. And then two things happen. One is if you're conscious of story and distinctions, you start to see the world through story, and distinctions. And then you've got something to bring in to the coaching. And then also I heard Michael telling a story one day, or maybe he'd written it, I forget, but I was reading it, I think, and I realized, oh, that's not Michael's story. I know that story. That came from, I don't know what it was, another teacher, or it was an ancient story. And he just told it. And I remember thinking, oh, I thought I have to make all this stuff and it all has to be mine. And it's like, you can sometimes tell an old Zen story or a story you've heard or someone else has told you. And sometimes it can be personal. So that, a bunch of those things help me to relax around it. And because I see the world now through distinction and through story, I tend to build up a bank of distinctions and stories.
Ah, nice. Well, let's talk about some of the specific things I noticed with each, like with Ruby, Luke, and Steve. And so one thing I caught you do really early on was Luke shared kind of this fear about where he was not lasting, almost like he's kind of trying to future-proof, against something happening. And what you did, which I thought was really elegant, was you just affirmed the fear. You're kind of like, well, guess what? It'll happen. And so there's a distinction between kind of like confirming the fear versus quashing our client's possibility, right? Sometimes we want to bring the fear into the present and have them just be with it. And other times we want to have them present to what's available. So how do you navigate between those two? And, is that even something on your mind, or what had you go down that path?
Yeah, it's conscious. I want to embrace what you're in resistance to. Because the thing you're in resistance to, it's hard to do to one person. But if you get two people together and say, push your hands against one another, and then people just stand up and put both hands like this, you find that there's just they find this equilibrium. The more somebody pushes, the more the other one pushes back. And so if you're in resistance to something, it's an equal and opposite resistance to you. So when a client comes in with this thought or an idea or a way of being that they can't stand any longer, they want to shift, I want to make it right. I want to look for where it's really serving them. I was doing it with you too, Ruby, where I wanted to see where I don't want you to get rid of that ambition and drive. It's amazing. It's what makes you who you are. If we make it wrong that you're doing, that this hard work is in you, then something could shift that's not healthy for you and who you want to be in the world. So I want to make that right. And so I was consciously doing that with Luke. I was having a bit of fun with it too. Like, hey, dude, that's never going away. So there's some playfulness in there as well.
Yeah, Luke, I'm curious, Luke, like what happened for you in that moment when Rich kind of was like, almost like took it away from you? Like, oh, that thing you're trying to prevent from happening, guess what? It's happening. How did that impact you?
Yeah, as soon as he acknowledged it and accepted it, I think he created a space for it to go away. And it was kind of, it wasn't until you started talking about this, I realized how quickly it went away. And that was because we just acknowledged the elephant in the room for the most part. So yeah, by acknowledging it, you create the space for it to take a step back, which I never would have thought of. So that's good.
It's Aikido. In Aikido, it's the one martial art where you use your opponent's force against themselves. So if someone's coming with a punch to you in another martial art, you might try and block it, push it out the way, even sidestep it. But in Aikido, someone punches you, you might just pull them like that and then they'll fall down on their own. So playing with that, it just, for you, Luke, just dissipated, right?
It's a lot. The thing I find so fascinating about that is it's almost counterintuitive. Like a lot of coaches, especially new coaches, will be like, oh, got it. Let's figure out how to make sure that never happens. And we'll build up this fortress and you'll be safe in your fortress, constantly afraid of that thing happening, just building more and more stronger resistance. So it's really one of those beautiful places where the obvious thing would actually have continued Luke going around in circles. And what you did was almost just snip it.
Most coaches do what I call remedial coaching. They're looking for the problem that you have so you can solve that problem. I have read every time management book under the sun. I used to be the thing, all I ever did was work on time management. You guys might be able to relate to this because when you're hard workers and ambitious and driven, you think, I just need more time. And what I learned is, both for myself and then for clients, so I helped trying to give them time management techniques, that if you take someone whose life is really full because they're doing so much and help them get better at managing their time, they just think they have a bigger plate and put more stuff on it. So you have to go underneath that to find out what's really going on and solve that rather than solving what they present.
Right. Yeah. Beautifully put. What had you simmer Luke at about 12 minutes, you kind of took him off the hot seat, let him just simmer. What was your hit that had you do that?
12 minutes in, I don't remember exactly. Rich, what did you say that?
I don't remember. I think I talked about the plateau at that point. I forget. I just remember seeing your face, and I think your eyes were just up a little bit. And the moment someone's eyes are up, I know they're in their head, they're thinking a little bit, and that's usually a clue for me. Like, oh, his mind is spinning right now because we just shifted his world. I just took out the foundations of what looked like his world, and so he's now like, oh, where am I? What's going on? Ruby had a moment like that I saw for her as well. And so that for me is one of those clues. I'll pull someone off the hot seat and let them simmer.
I knew the timing was right, whatever it was. It was like, whatever you said, I needed to think about that because there was more to it. So your timing was perfect.
Mm. And what about, so there's like an element of being present, really being present to the client and their physicality. And what about in a situation where someone's on the phone? Because I'm sure there's people like, well, yeah, but I can't always coach face-to-face or with videos. So are you listening for an upturn in their voice, or what do you listen for, Rich, or try to get present to hear those moments?
When I first started coaching, I loved coaching in person. I trained in person, so I thought I'm never going to coach over the phone. But years ago when I first started, I was traveling a lot. And I realized I don't want to have clients face-to-face because that will tie me to staying in one place. So I coached over the phone. Video conferencing wasn't so good 10 years ago. There was too much of a time lag. It wasn't good enough quality. So I only did phone coaching for years. And I picked up this really powerful sensory acuity. I could hear in a breath or in a pause or in the silence words that were unspoken. So it's hard to distinguish in this moment because we're on video, but I would hear in a breath or a pause, and I would make a choice in that moment, and I'd say something. But being open to being wrong. Sometimes I'll say, like, I think this is a hot seat moment, I'm going to take you off the hot seat. And then you find out if there's more or there's not.
Yeah. I'll ask you this for each of the person, but like, what is the question or the thing you're left wondering with regards to Luke?
So I have a smile because it's not so much a wondering. It's I suppose it is. Yeah, okay, maybe it's a curiosity. I wonder what's going to happen when he embraces the plateau, because I know he knows how to play this game. It's the only way you can become an extraordinary magician and performer the way he is. You have to practice more than anybody else is willing to practice. So when he brings this into what's coming next, and he learns to embrace the plateau, then something magical is going to happen. So I'm curious what that will be.
Yeah. I really got, just being with Luke, I really got that who Luke is play/mirth. There's almost like this, you can almost tell he's just going to, like, this huge smile is going to break out at a moment's notice, and then magic. And then I also wrote down king. And I felt as you were just working with him, kind of drawing that out. Like, a king doesn't try to figure out how to build I don't know much about kings, but I don't think they try to figure out how to build an impenetrable, impregnable castle. They go out into the world and be with whatever's showing up. So I really felt you kind of working with that, even if you weren't labeling it.
Nice.
Here's something I saw you do with Ruby that I think is really masterful, and I see you do this often, which is you either extend or just get right into the client's metaphors and then walk with them. So Ruby was talking about a little bit about a duck, and you kind of took that along and just use that same language as her and played around with her.
If I'm right, I don't think Ruby used the language of duck. I think it was me.
You extended it.
Yeah, because I saw that. I used a metaphor in that moment. So there's metaphors are powerful because they take a client out of their story. So if I see something that's going on, I might use a metaphor to draw them out of a story, because then they can get it in a way that it's, if I started pointing at her, it looks like you're doing this and this. Sometimes you can catch it, sometimes you can't. Oh, it sounds like you're a bit like a duck, or you're calm on the surface underneath, paddling furiously. And she smiled in that moment. I knew I got there. Other times the client will come in with a metaphor, and then it's really powerful to dive into the metaphor with them, to make the metaphor real.
So I noticed there was almost like a line of questioning, like Ruby said, I work best under pressure, which you kind of accepted. And then you asked the question, you offered the distinction of pressure versus stress, and then asked her, what has you adding in stress?
Mm.
So I wondered, was there, it's kind of like an assertion you're making, right? That she's adding in stress and then inviting her to answer as though that's true. Was that something where you're like, I can see this, I'm going to ask her a question just to kind of shortcut the thinking about it and have her answer from there? Or
I was being playful. I wanted to see if, and she didn't answer it the first time around. She couldn't quite hear it. Sometimes you'll ask a question and they don't hear it because this is their way of being. These are the glasses through which I see the world, and I don't realize they've got a green tint. And someone says the world's, do you see the green tint? No, this is just the world. Oh my God, it is green. I hadn't realized. And so I was being playful in that moment. She didn't hear it the first time. I asked it again, and I didn't know. I'm constantly dropping little pebbles into the pond to see where they ripple out and see if something catches. And I think we left the pressure versus stress metaphor distinction alone as we went down the road. But it was the first little pebble in the water to see.
Well, there was another part to that before you.
Ruby's smiling in this moment, so I'm just curious what's happening.
Because when you had said stress, I was honestly in my head thinking, because I was silent right away, I was like, when the fuck did I say stress? Like, that's what came up for me. And I was like, why the fuck is he saying stress? Am I stressed? What's going on? And that's what was going on in that moment of silence, to be honest.
Oh, that's really interesting, right? Because I didn't say, you sound stressed, you look stressed. I took this idea of this distinction of pressure versus stress. And then I dropped it in as a pebble of like, why are you choosing to feel stressed?
Mm-hmm.
I was conscious in the way I was playing with you to see what would happen.
That's what happened.
Cool. So sorry, Adam, I interrupted your question.
No, that's really awesome though, right? To even get the feedback, right? Because it was something added in, and then often I think all of us, we don't realize there can be an impact when we do that. So thank you so much for sharing that, Ruby. And one thing you did that I loved was once it felt kind of like Ruby accepted the question, like, okay, maybe, why am I creating stress? And you invited her to look, what has you creating that? What are you getting out of that? And she was like, nothing, absolutely nothing. And you kind of invited her, what I call it is holding how the client's showing up with reverence. Like, you really invited her, like, well, actually, let's assume there is some value. Like, you're a smart woman. Maybe there is a reason for doing this. Were you looking for something specific, or were you just kind of holding it in the general sense? Like, I think that there's just really some brilliance to this woman, and she's probably created this for like there's some payoff.
I have a belief that whatever we've got going on in our life, we've created for a reason. It's a bit like we talked about with Luke earlier. Like, it's my assumption. It's the premise I have going in. I can't tell if it's right or wrong. I'm not trying to write a book and prove that if my premise is correct, but it's the way I play. That if you have something going on in your life that you're in resistance to, that you're frustrated by, like I see life is heavy and scarce, and I wish it was light and abundant, but it's not, then there's a benefit in there for you. And I want to find out where it is. So where does it come from? And there was this light moment with Steve when he talked about his Depression era grandmother. Oh, of course. Yeah, well, you're honoring her memory. Her DNA is in yours, coming from scarcity. When the markets go up and down, when the economy goes up and down, there are moments when you want to make sure that you've been protecting your resources. I was able to honor that in him because by doing so, it gives him permission to have play with it. Do I want to hang on to that? Do I want to let go of it? Do I want to have choice, agency, and when I have access to scarcity and access to abundance? So I'm embracing and acknowledging and giving power to that thing that my client is usually in resistance to.
Yeah, we often want to throw that, that baton we've learned to use right out the door without realizing we also get something from it. And if we throw it out the door, we're creating an absence.
Yes, and it will come back. It will come back because you've got rid of it too soon. But by giving you agency, you have the ability to bring it in when you choose to. It must have a benefit to you, otherwise you wouldn't have it still. and then you get to play with it.
So it's a boomerang, not a baton. Here's something you didn't really go into, but really triggered a flag for me, and I'm curious about how you felt around it. Was Ruby started to talk about like how I'm delegating, it's really good. But at the same time, I noticed she hadn't really distinguished what she's getting out of creating all this pressure or stress. And so, someone can create, you once said to me, you can never get enough of what you don't really need. And if she gets something out of creating pressure, all the delegating in the world is not going to make a difference, because she's going to keep trying to create more pressure. She'll just find new and exciting new ways to create pressure. You didn't really go into that. I'm curious if you were present to it and if it was intentional step over, or if that was just like, that's one of 2 roads or 3 or 4.
So masterful way to continue the coaching of Ruby. She got that one. That was great. Because there are always ways to go deeper and ways to play, and moments when you have to choose as a coach. Will I pause here? Sometimes I pause because I want to give them time to reflect. I'm not trying to go 20 layers down the rabbit hole. Sometimes I pause because it just feels right in that moment. Honestly, I can't recall in this moment what I was feeling in my body, why I didn't carry on in there. But I want to repeat the phrase you said, because you've got to hear it twice if you haven't heard it before. You can never have enough of what you don't really need. And one of the things as coaches is I'll say it again, I saw you, Luke. You can never have enough of what you don't really need. And as coaches, when we can distinguish that thing that client is craving, they don't really need, then there's space for them to create what they really want. Now, I'll make it real for you in a second. I'll take the liberty of using something political. We have a president of the United States right now who, in theory at least, is one of the most powerful people in the world. But you can see from his actions, he doesn't feel that way. And whatever he's doing when he's getting into a Twitter battle with somebody or whatever, it's because there's something he's craving that he feels he doesn't have. Mm-hmm. So put politics aside, whatever your views on that. It's just a very real example in this moment. And it's true for all of us. For me, it was my dad's approval. I was craving my father's approval for so much of my life. So I wanted you to like me. That's my thing with you, Steve. That people pleasing piece that I have too. I wanted to impress you. I wanted to prove myself, because I was always trying to prove myself to my father in a way that I actually didn't need to do.
We have till the bottom of the hour, right?
We do, yeah.
Great. What were you left wondering for or about Ruby?
I can't wait to hear what happens when she shows up on day one at this event she's running and says, I haven't got a clue where we're going, guys. And I promise you it's going to be magical.
Very cool.
Let's ask Ruby. I want to hear what happens when I say that, because that's on me. It doesn't have to be on you.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what happens as I learn to loosen my grip on the reins this year, and see what unfolds from it, and see how I feel from it, and see how my clients benefit from it and everything.
So let me offer you this.
Mm-hmm.
This is where all I'm ever working with my clients on is expanding their range, Adam. So Ruby's created an amazing life and business within this much range. And,
mm-hmm.
and the range for her is constrained by how much control she needs to have. Mm-hmm. And by letting go of control, her range gets wider. And as your range increases, so does your capacity for all sorts of seeing things you couldn't see before, opening to new experiences you couldn't have been able to experience before, new possibilities that you literally couldn't see before. Mm-hmm. So it's going to feel really intense to you if you're used to having this much tightness on the control, even just to loosen a little bit. Mm-hmm. Even that will have a big impact. If you're willing to really play, if I was working with Ruby over time, I'd have her, I don't know what I'd do. I'm smiling now because there's something fun I'd have you do where it looked like you being out of control. So I see, look at the energy it brings to her. Because secretly she's craving that.
Yeah.
And I speak as someone who really wants to have a tight grip on control. So I don't know whether it would be something like being on a what do you call it, an improv class, but that's probably too close to what you'd be comfortable with. So I'm not quite sure what it would be, but there'd be something that would have her just feel like she's out of control. And it would bring a lot of energy into your body. It would feel scary, and it would actually blow your mind about how fun it can be to be out of control. Look at her eyes.
It's like a mixture of fear and delight.
Exactly.
One of the things you did with Steve that I thought was really great was kind of like acknowledging the brilliance that was already there. So Steve was talking about this heaviness, and then you invited, where I would have gone was invite him to notice that he is already light, and how he keeps adding heaviness in his, like how he's attaching sandbags to himself, and to look through that lens. You went kind of from the same starting place, but a different route, which was for him to notice where he is already light, where he is already creating a light. Was there something that twigged that? Were you just present, like, hey, I want this man is light, and he's just not seeing it? Or what drove that particular path that you took?
I don't know in this moment for that one. I'm not sure. Sometimes it's a gut instinct. Sometimes it's like I said, a little pebble in the pond to see what happens. I know that I see on my paper, I'd written down heaviness and scarcity, and I put the distinction in heaviness versus lightness, scarcity versus abundance. So I was curious, and depending on his answers, I might have gone in different directions.
It really spoke to, I felt you really, like, this is the eliciting part of masterful coaching, is really helping the client get present to who they already are, as opposed to, trying to paint more, how can I paint lightness on top of these sandbags that I'm attaching to my foot for some reason? Like, I just need more helium balloons.
These days I look at it as eliciting greatness. In the book, The Prosperous Coach, I think I call it the glimpse of genius. I'm looking for where is it something about you that's absolutely extraordinary? And how do I see it? So I'm searching and scanning for that. How do I draw it out? So getting him in touch with what I think is amazing, this product that he's doing. This is an amazing entrepreneur who's doing something completely new for him that excites him, that lights him up. I wanted to acknowledge that. And then also draw in the genius of the heaviness too. There's beauty in that. We've mentioned a couple of times, so I won't say it again. There's scarcity too. That there's beauty in that, and Steve having access to all of that.
Just two more things. So one was, I was really present when Steve was speaking to like what felt like grief or deep sadness, perhaps heartbreak. And as I got present with him, I felt my heart take on, like I felt heartbroken. I wasn't sure what it was, but I was just like, wow, this, whatever it is, it feels really heavy. Was there,
so can I pause you in a second? Because I want to find, so this is an amazing coaching moment. We check in with our body and our experiences, and then we ask the client, hey, I was feeling this. So Steve, how does that resonate? What when Adam says that?
Well, it's interesting, because I was like, when he was talking, I was like, okay, where did that come in? Because I know there was a moment, like I think when he was talking about my grandmother, I think that's where it was like, all of a sudden there was this emotion that wasn't there before in the conversation, and it was big. And that's when I kind of realized, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's stuff about passage of time, and there's stuff about all of these things. And I realized that this is, in some ways, it's a reconnection with that, which has its own power. In some ways, it's a reconnection with how I was, I think, how I've been in my past. And it's sort of crawling back to that space when I feel a little bit out on the ledge. And even though it's not a happy space, it's a familiar space.
You feeling it now?
Yeah, a little bit. Just there's an emotion in there. Like it's my grandmother, it's me. There's something going on there. There's something deeper that this has been building for the last week. And it wasn't, it just can't, like you said, you can't squash this stuff down. It's just you gotta let it flow over you and acknowledge I've suddenly started to appreciate more what it brings. It's like, check yourself out, make sure you're good, but it doesn't have to define how I have to be.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I felt it, and you could hear in the crack in Steve's voice then that what he was feeling. And so Adam, you caught that earlier on, you felt it. And by you speaking it out loud, you checked in with your intuition. This is what I am feeling. And one of the coolest tools you have as a coach is your own body. And when you're not attached to it, when it's like, most coaches are like, oh, you're feeling sad, right? Or you're feeling angry, right? And they'll put, when you own, hey, I'm noticing this sense, this sense of grief overcame me. What do you make of that? Then they can go, oh, I don't know. Or, oh yeah, me too. It wasn't grief for me though, it was this. And they'll give their own twist on it. And it's a really powerful way of accessing something going on inside of them by checking with your own intuition, but giving space for them to own what, as much or as little as they want to, of how they were feeling.
Do we have time for one last question for you?
Go for it.
So I've noticed this in my own coaching and a lot of coaching and yours as well. There's a point where we've coached so many people, we often see kind of like, oh, I know what the next question might be. And we also know to let go of that question, but still there's often a sort of direction to support someone in going in their exploration. Do you struggle with that where you're like, oh, I need to come up with the next best, proper, good question? Or have you at this point gotten beyond that and recognized like, oh, I don't have to be this far ahead. I just have to be where the client's at. How do you work with that?
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell all of you a trick for this, you guys and anyone who's watching. Most conversations are not really conversations. They're saying what they're going to say. You're already thinking about what your response is going to be, and then you've got it ready. As soon as they finish, you've got your response, and they're doing the same thing, so they're ready. It's not a real conversation. It's not real listening. Monique's, my wife's 96-year-old grandmother, said to me last year before she passed away, I asked her, what's your advice for young people these days? And she said, you know what, Rich? Young people don't realize that the word listen has the same letters as the word silent. Mm. So being willing to really listen when someone's speaking. And the way you can do this is, I won't make you guys do this. You've seen me do this sometimes, some of you before. You can poke your tongue out and hold your tongue. Hold your tongue, literally hold it like that. And if you do it, and if you're not on camera, you feel free to do this, but hold your tongue between your fingers and you'll discover that your thinking slows down. Because all the time that I'm talking, if you're ready for your response, you're making little micro movements in your mouth. Your tongue is, as you think, your tongue is moving slightly inside of your mouth. And if you hold your tongue, your thoughts slow down. Now it's a little bit weird to do that in a coaching conversation, but what you can do is press your tongue to the top of your mouth, to the roof of your mouth. And you can all do that right now. And as you do that, again, your thinking slows down so you can be more present. So the way I catch myself, Adam, is if it's a burning question, if I feel, oh my God, I've got to ask this or say this, or I've got this amazing insight, that's probably more about me. And I might own it and say, hey, I've got this thing and it's feeling I'm burning to say it. Or I might just slow down enough that I choose not to say it. Adam, this is beautiful. Thank you so much. Really good fun for me doing this. I think awesome insights, more than just doing the coaching. I want to honor each of you guys, Steve, Ruby, and Luke. Thank you again for playing and going deeper. Thank you guys for watching. If anyone wants to do more of this, then right now, for the first time ever, I'm running a mastermind group where I'm going to take a small group of 10 people and be their coach in a group like this over 10 months. Just go to richlitvin.com/mastermind. We've got about 5 spots left, and we launch in about 4 weeks. We start running and run the whole of the year. So if you really want to play with me, sunlight is blinding me out. If you really want to play with me, come along and play richlitvin.com/mastermind. But this was really fun. And I think the universe is fading me out, right? It's like the Oscars, I'm being faded out. Adam, thank you. Ruby, Luke, Steve, thank you guys. All of you have watched. Thank you. I see all the goodbyes showing up in the chat box now. Thank you guys. If any of you are watching and you're not part of our Facebook group, look for The Prosperous Coach and the Facebook group and come and join us. All right, Adam, Luke, Ruby, Steve, thank you, gang. Bye for now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Adam.